So I really want to bring you up to speed on about 5-6 bullets. Number one is the public-private partnership. You know, you don't build a $45 million project, which is the cost of this project, without having an incredible public-private partnership within the community. And I have to tell you, as I was preparing to decide whether or not I was coming to Grand Rapids to do this project, you know, that was a big deal, because you don't want to come up here and you don't have a community that supports it. This community is all on board. Not only that, from the local, but the state government, the county government, city government, the federal agencies, there's a true partnership there. Now, we'll tell you, it is difficult sometimes when you're trying to pull all of them together to get answers on permitting and all that, so it's not easy, but you got to have it. When you're bringing public assets back to bear, most cities can't afford it by themselves, and this river is a public asset that's incredible, and you have to have those public-private partnerships to do that. And I'll go over with you the different buckets of money, the sources of those funds at the end, but I have to tell you up front, great community to do this project in. The next piece is design, and we've got the river basically from up north to between Ann Street and Leonard Street, all the way down to Fulton. And what we've done, we've broken it up into really three projects. So we've got the piece from 196 to Fulton that we've designed, and that's the piece or the reach that we're going through the permitting process as we speak. The next piece, as far as the design, is the adjustable hydraulic structure down to 196. And that process is ongoing also, but it's behind this lower reach, because we need to get to construction with that lower reach. So that's where we are in the design. But when you're going through a design project on a project like this, there are a lot of guiding principles that we have to work through. Certainly flood staging. If we go into the river and we go put fill in the river, we're going to bring up the water level. So there's been tons of money, all kinds of hydraulic modeling that's been done. It's really, it could be a curriculum by itself if you wanted to do something like that. So that whole flood modeling is absolutely important, because we cannot, with this project, we cannot raise the flood staging either above the adjustable hydraulic structure, which is in the Plainfield area, or below it. We just can't do it. If we do, we wouldn't get a permit. So you have to have all that modeling that's based on what we're doing in the river, and then we have to model that to make sure we're not impacting flood staging. And then the other piece of it is public safety. If we were to raise the flood staging, that would certainly be a public safety issue. But as far as the design, we want a project that when you or your children or family members get in that river, it's a good river and it's a safe river as far as what we're putting in there as far as recreation features. Same thing with fishing. The anglers that are in that river, we want to make sure that we've got good wading paths, all those things, and good access. So safety is certainly a piece of it. And then we have to, as far as the design, we have to avoid and mitigate our endangered species, which is the snuffbox mussels. So that design, flood staging, if the flood staging is not working and we have a lot of sedimentation covers the mussels up, and boom, they're gone. So let me be transparent. I'm not an engineer and I'm not a biologist. So I'm just giving you things that I've learned in the last year as we go through this process. So those are things that are very important. All of you are familiar with sea lamprey. Today, the 6th Street Dam is a sea lamprey barrier, and it's a velocity barrier. A sea lamprey travels at about 13.1 feet per second. That velocity, as it's coming over 6th Street Dam, it's way above that. So we have a pretty good risk factor of being able to maintain today the way it's in its configuration today. We have a really good barrier there. So the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission, DNR, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, hey guys, if you're going to build all this stuff down there in that river, we got to make sure that even during this first phase of construction we're doing, you can't impact that barrier in regard to sea lamprey. So we have to deal with that during construction and post-construction. And then when we start building an adjustable hydraulic structure, it has to be modeled to make sure it all ties together to maintain. We're moving the 6th Street down basically to Ann Street, but it still has to be a sealant barrier. So all those are design components that have to be worked in. And then I mentioned sedimentation. You know, we have to do sedimentation models to know where the sedimentation. I will tell you that sedimentation is a natural happening. It just happens. I've seen it on the Chattahoochee River where I did the project in Columbus. You know, you'll have a major rain event. There'll be a big sediment over here on the river right, and it'll stay there until the next, and it'll move over river left. It just moves. So sedimentation is going to happen in this river, but we have to model it so that we've got an idea of what it's going to be. Then another big piece of it is we're taking out 4 low head dams, and then the big dam at 6th Street. That improves fish passage. But it's more than that. You know, we have to go through DNR and to make sure that we have fish passage on the margins, on river left and river right. They want fish passage in the middle of the river. They look at depths and all those things. So we have to keep our design based on their principles. And then certainly the recreation component, the features that we build in the river to bring the rapids back, we want to make sure they're safe. So all these components, and I haven't even named all of them, all these principles have to be dialed in to the design process. You know, I mentioned fish passes. These are just some of the things I mentioned that, you know, we have to have margins on river right and river left. So, you know, fish, like today, fish are in a habit of going river left to get to the fish ladder. Now, is that just a natural thing, or do they know that fish are? So those are all the things that we've got to duplicate. And then, you know, the velocities of the river at near bottom. Near bottom is an important piece of it. What is the velocity near bottom? Because a lot of fish move at near bottom. So we have to go through that process to define, and that's all done through modeling. And then, you know, the circulation, if you see this map, you see all these little arrows on it, that means the circulation is going downriver. A fish, as they travel up, they want the circulation on their nose. They don't want it going around because they can't figure out where to go. So you have to go through this process to make sure that if you've got eddies, where they are, but you still have to maintain fish passage. And what this is called a heat map. And this heat map, it measures a lot. It measures depth. You know, you see these lighter colors where water velocities are high. These are our margins here. This is a recreation feature, so we know that fish aren't going to get by that. You know, the velocity is too high, so we have to have this margin here. It will be river right, which is the west side, for fish to get through. So these are all principles that we worked really hard with DNR, especially DNR, to come up with good fish passage on this reach of the river. We're just starting the whole design on fish passage for that reach of the river from 6th Street down to 196. You know, do we have to pass all fish? You know, that's a real struggle for us as far as design. So we went through a process to kind of group fish together. We have a fish biologist on our team, and he has done a really incredible job of marrying up with DNR to make sure that we're doing everything we can to pass all fish. So we get to permitting. Back about 4 months ago, we were headed down a path to get a permit for the whole reach of the river from adjustable hydraulic structure down to Fulton. But it was really getting really complicated for a lot of reasons, but number one was schedule. Because we know this lower reach, we need to have the money expended by 2022. So we came to a decision with a lot of input from the different state and federal agencies to do a Section 7 process. So what that Section 7 process does, we're doing that just for that lower reach from 196 down to Fulton. And we have two things to deal with as far as we have the endangered species, which I'm sure you've talked about, the snuffbox mussel, and then we have the sea lamprey. Now the snuffbox mussel, you know, Heidi Dunn, she's our biologist that's worked in the river for 4 or 5 years. She's been in the river, they've surveyed the river, they've counted mussels, they know as best you can how many mussels in each They will go out and put grids in the river. They go through those grids, picking up mussels. So they have a pretty good idea. It's about 43,000 mussels that we're having to deal with. So as a part of that, we have to minimize and mitigate the mussel deal. So that's the big deal with the endangered species, which is the Section 7 process. That's the Endangered Species Act. So what happens, Heidi has to write a biological opinion. Once you know you've got an endangered species in any project, you have to write it up. You have to write a biological assessment, and that biological assessment identifies what species are in the river, particularly the endangered. Here we have not only endangered, but we have state listed. So those two both come into play, because you'd have to get, even if we didn't have an endangered, we'd have to get a permit from DNR because of the state listing. So we're going through this process, and you deliver the BA to U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Once you do that, you have a 90-day formal consultation period. That's an important deal, because that's when the clock starts ticking on our process to get our first permit. So we will deliver our final BA, if everything goes to plan, December the 7th to U.S. Fish and Wildlife. They'll have 90 days for formal consultation, and then they'll have 45 days to write a biological opinion. Once they write that biological opinion, they really out of the deal. We have to respond to what they put in that biological opinion. We know that the mitigation is going to be about $1 million for these mussels. So we have to put $1 million in the budget for the mussels. And that was a negotiation thing that we went through, and we're pretty confident that's going to be the number. So that's a big piece of it. The other piece is because that, we are doing construction in the river in this reach. We are changing the elevation of the water, so it impacts sea lamprey. We have to do an analysis on how we go impact sea lamprey during construction, and then we have to do an analysis on how we go impact the barrier after construction. So once this piece is completed, which we hope will be in 22, how is that going to affect the barrier at 6 feet? We have to give them all that information. Now, we do reduce their risk factor, but it's still a pretty good risk factor, and we think we will get beyond that. So at the same time that we're doing the BA, we have to get an environmental assessment. So we have a third party that's doing that, and they're tracking right along with us. And as a part of the environmental assessment, we have to get a watershed work plan. So if everything goes to plan on the BO, the environmental assessment, and the work plan, best case, that's going to be completed sometimes in late summer, fall of 19. Concurrently with that, we're also working on our DEQ permit. That application is city staff and Grand Rapids Whitewater staff are working on getting all the information together for that permit. And the big deal with that permit is the flood model. They want to make sure that we don't adversely affect, no harmful interference to any properties. We have to send documentation out. If we raise the water one inch on the flood wall, the property owner has to get a notice that, hey, your water's going up on the flood wall. It's a very, very, very complicated process, but we're starting to work through that as we speak. So those permits are going. So if all that comes together, we'd have a permit to be able to work in the river sometimes late 19. Then it becomes the question of, do you really want to get in the river and mobilize and spend all that money to mobilize, and you're in the river for a month? So there's a lot of decisions as we get closer to getting to where we know whether we go get a permit. We'll decide whether or not we'll actually be working in the river. We already have the construction manager on board, so we could expedite that pretty quickly. So that's that lower reach that we're working on. Same process is getting ready to start on that upper reach from Ann Street to 196. And the Corps of Engineers will do that piece. They are doing an environmental impact study, which is a lot more detailed. But all that will start sometimes probably right at the end of the year. It's going to take them about 2 years to do the environmental impact study. So we hope to be under construction on the AHS sometimes in 21. Okay. And how many of you are familiar with the adjustable hydraulic structure? So this one is in Waverly, Iowa, and what it is, it's a bladder system, real thick Kevlar, about this thick, that are these things right here, and these are a metal. These are metal sheet pile, but not sheet pile, but sheets that as you inflate that bladder, it goes up and down. It is monitored, a lot of good technology here. There'll be sensors all up and down the river that measures rainfall, and it will be dialed in based on all the modeling and flood events to marry up with what happens, for instance, up on Brigadoor Trail. A 2-inch rain brings the water up another 6 inches. This hydraulic structure it'll be programmed with sensors to measure all that, and it can adjust up and down as those different rain events move it. Okay. So based on what I'm telling you today, I think probably worst case is we will start construction on that lower reach in 20. Hopefully, if everything aligns, we'd be able to start in 19. It breaks my heart to have to tell you that's a real stretch, but I hope it's 19 instead of 20. And why that's important, we have to build this whole cofferdam system so that we can isolate the river so we can go in and get the mussels. And I didn't tell you that. So the way we're going to deal with the mussels, we go divide the river up into isolation areas. So once an isolation area is set up, we'll start drawing the water down and draw it down to about a foot, and then all our biologists will go in the river and handpick the mussels. We're very restricted. Sea lamprey move. They're migrating basically from April, May, and June. So we can't even we can't affect the water level during those times. So it's hard to work during that time anyway, because you know what the river looks like during that time. It's just hard to get out there. But for instance, if we had a different spring, and that river, we could get in that river in June and work, we could pick up a month, but we can't, because if we're in there working, we raise that water level, and it lessens the sea lamprey barrier. So it's just, you got all these things that you're trying to balance around to get in that river to do the work. But at the end of the day, I have to tell you, this is going to transform this community. I've seen it in the community that I came from, and the project we did there was basically the 2.5 mile river to Chattahoochee. We took out 2 dams, much bigger than here. It was a dam release river where our water would go from 800 CFS in the morning to 13,000 in the afternoon. That's almost every day. And so we call it Mile to Wild. If you Google Chattahoochee River, and it's some big water. But in the mornings, it's a family river. It's like a little float. It's got some small rapids, but it's got a lazy river you can get out. So we go have that here. And I've just seen what a project like this will do for a community. And I'll say this in closing, and then we'll take questions, is that there's not but a few cities in this country that can do what we're doing here. They can all build a new arena. They can all build new softballs complexes. They can do all that. But not many communities can do what's happening here at this river. And it's an incredible opportunity, and I'm fortunate to have been a part of it, and it is going to be transformational, I can tell you that. Mm-hmm. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.